October 4th, 1952, Harlem. 13 men threw Bumpy Johnson from a rooftop, sure the fall would kill him. 48 feet, 4 stories, concrete at the bottom. That was supposed to be it, but when Bumpy hit that ground breathing, everything changed. This wasn't some emotional outburst over pride. It was colder than hate. It was math. One dead man meant Harlem was open territory. That night cracked Harlem's spine, or so they thought. But to grasp what really happened, we have to go back to when the clock started ticking. That same night, same place. 7th Avenue. The rooftop of 2289 7th Avenue looms 48 feet above West 134th Street, staring down at the asphalt like a guillotine waiting for the nod. The air is cruel and dry, slicing through the stillness with a chill sharp enough to rattle your bones. The sky is clear, crystal and cruel. No clouds to hide behind, no rain to blur the violence that's coming. Nothing between the rising moon and what's about to take place. Bumpy Johnson stands alone at the center, eyes steady, hands empty. No gun, no knife, no backup, just him and the circle closing in. 13 men surround him. Their formation isn't sloppy or hesitant. These aren't drunk punks looking for trouble. They're enforcers, strategists, predators. Shadows stretch across the gravel toward Bumpy like claws reaching out to snatch breath from a body. These men brought lead pipes wrapped for grip, not mercy. Their bats have already broken bones up and down Manhattan's west side. The chains they hold have history, bruises, scabs, death. Each weapon has a job tonight. Every swing is premeditated. Patrick Red Malone steps forward, 6 feet of street-forged rage. A man built from muscle and violence tempered by Southie childhoods and dockside brawls. His face carries old damage, broken glass, broken jaw, broken rules. They call him Red, not just for the rusted copper hair, but for the blood. Red broke his empire in piece by piece. If you didn't pay, your shop turned to ash. If you talked, your bones talked instead, one fracture at a time. Cross Red's line, then you'd be diving into the Hudson, weighed down by concrete and regret. Red's domain stretched from 59th down through Chelsea, warehouses, docks, trucks, cash. He ruled his kingdom like a lion who'd forgotten how to sleep. His crew, raised on Boston's hard corners, with a few Italians in the mix, too brutal even for the 5 families. Violence wasn't their tool, it was their language. But Harlem was the next move. One man, Bumpy Johnson, stood between them and the flood of money tied to the numbers game in that black capital. Take him out and Harlem crumbles. Simple math. Red's voice cuts through the rooftop air. You had your warning, he says, each syllable dragging like a dull blade across the night. When we broke Tommy's jaw, you should have listened. But instead, you sent your men to crack skulls on our docks. That was your mistake. Bumpy remains quiet, his eyes moving, not fearfully, but methodically. Counting weapons, gauging distance, calculating. Red lays it all out. We're gonna work you over, not just to kill you. That's too quick. We'll start with your ribs. One crack at a time. Fingers next, they're gonna scatter like splinters. You'll beg, maybe. Won't change a thing. He gestures to the edge of the rooftop. The target isn't just pain, it's spectacle. Then we throw you over. Let the street below finish what's left. 13 men shift forward. Pipes tighten in their hands. Chains sway rhythmically. One man taps a bat against his palm, steady and slow, like a countdown without numbers. Another flicks a blade open, not to kill, but to mark, to hurt, to bleed. Red leans in, breath visible in the chill. Tomorrow, Harlem wakes up to their king smashed across 7th Avenue, brain on the sidewalk, bone in the gutter. and they'll remember what happens when they think they can teach us anything. Bumpy's voice, calm and low, floats into the prelude of carnage. 13 men, he says. That's what it takes to throw one man off a roof and make sure he doesn't walk away. Red snarls. This is an execution. Far below, somewhere in the rhythm of Harlem's night, Marcus is likely waiting, maybe leaning against the wall in their familiar barber shop on Lenox. Marcus keeps the policy banks grinding, the collections clean. Without him, Harlem shakes. Without Bumpy, it falls. Red knows it. That's why tonight isn't quick. It's theatrical. He wants Harlem scared, not just of death, but of what death looks like when it's meant to teach. Fear needs a stage. Control needs a spotlight. Red asks, last words? The circle tightens. Chains begin to hum in the air. One enforcer flips his blade, ready to draw blood. Bumpy glances toward the parapet, the place where concrete waits. He breathes deep, steady as ever. Then he says, just one. Red grunts. What? You ever throw someone off a roof and have them live? They laugh. Red roars first, and the others burst right behind. Because to them, 48 feet is math. Skulls crack, spines snap, organs rupture. Nobody survives that kind of drop. Not a man, not a king. Physics doesn't care who you are, Red smirks. Good to know, Bumpy replies. Then Red nods. The weapons rise. The men move. But what happens next doesn't go how Red planned. Because some stories are remembered not for the blood spilled, but the choices made under the weight of death. And some lessons get taught both ways. Sullivan steps in first, his back cutting a flat arc across the rooftop. Two others move close, chains winding like snakes as metal hums through the air. The switchblade glints briefly before it locks with that sharp closing click, the kind that slashes more than silence. The trap is sprung. 13 men believe the kill is guaranteed, that in moments Harlem's throne will sit empty. But none of them see what's coming next. Because Bumpy has already done the math. There are no good options, only fewer bad ones. Fight. You get your bones turned to powder before they even throw you. Beg. They just take longer. Enjoy it more. Run. You'll only make it to the parapet, then over. But that fall, that's a variable. It's not a promise, just a roll of the dice that could land on something other than death. And Bumpy decides that the fall might be his only move, his only weapon, the only choice not already taken from him. Sullivan's bat slices toward his ribs, but Bumpy doesn't flinch away. He steps into the swing. The impact shudders through his shoulder instead of his side. A burst of white heat that spins him just enough toward the edge, toward the parapet, toward a chance. His hands slap the rooftop wall. His legs bend. He vaults. One move, clean, before any of the Westside Boys can stop him, before they can pull him back into the nightmare they built with chains and steel. Then all that's left is air. 1.7 seconds of it. Gravity wraps around him like a hand made of iron. The wind howls past his ears, pavement racing up with the promise of bone and silence. Speed builds. 48 feet of fall time obeys no man. But Bumpy fights the descent, twisting, angling, aiming for whatever chance may lie between certain doom and impossible survival. Not head first, not feet, sideways, shoulder and hip. A roll, if fate allows. Momentum spread out, not focused. Hope buried in calculation. Then, impact. It cracks through his body like a sledgehammer slamming soaked wood. Shoulder takes the blow. The bone caves in under the force. Ribcage follows, snapping one piece at a time. His hip screams against pressure that bones were never built to handle. His skull slams back, bouncing against the sidewalk with a jolt that fades his vision to gray. Not out, not yet, but close. It should have killed him, should have ended everything. But Bumpy Johnson is still breathing. He draws in air like knives, every breath stabbing against broken ribs and bruised lungs. Pain floods him, rising like the tide. But he's thinking. He can think. His fingers twitch. His feet respond. Brain intact. Spinal cord still in one piece. No bleeding that he can feel. Just agony. A live agony. Above, on the rooftop, Red Malone leans over the edge. What he sees doesn't register at first. A man, bloodied, broken, but alive, still breathing, still blinking in the moonlight. Red came expecting a spectacle. He got a question mark. He's still breathing, someone says from behind him. Not for long, Red snarls. Go down there. Finish it. Bumpy hears them coming, boots pounding stairs, voices barking orders. They'll be on him in seconds. He tries to get up. One leg disobeys, the other trembles. His arm is useless, dangling from a shattered shoulder. Pain bursts everywhere, but help reaches him first. 3 hands grab at him. Not enemies. Harlem. Black hands. Familiar hands. People who saw what happened and stepped out of shadow, refusing to let their king die on this street tonight. We got you, Bumpy, a voice says. It's someone he should know, but pain has names spinning like smoke. We got you. They pull him toward the alley, away from the lights, away from curbs that remember blood. They disappear into the dark, boots scraping pavement, voices hushed. That alley is where Harlem learns to hide its own. A cloth goes to his head, pressure where bones split open. Another hand steadies his broken leg. He bites down to keep from screaming. Metal on tongue, pain in every blink. We've got to get him to a hospital. A woman's voice this time. No hospital, Bumpy says, lips cracking over dry teeth. No reports, no cops, no paper trail. You're bleeding out, she presses. Your lungs, your shoulder, your ribs. You need Freddy. Freddy? He fixed men in the war, Bumpy says. He can fix men in the war, Bumpy says. He can fix me. His vision ripples, on, off. His mind wants to sleep, but he forces his eyes open again and again. If Red finds out he survived, the next attempt won't need gravity. Someone sprints into the night. Another lays him down gently over layered cardboard, soft as a grave. Blankets cover him, thick with mildew and old sweat. The rats watch from the shadows. Harlem watches too. And above them, voices echo from the rooftop again. The hit squad's reaching the street. By the time they arrive, there's just a wet stain on the sidewalk, and people shaking their heads. Didn't see a thing. They look up, then away. No body, no trace. Just a story about a fall and a man who vanished before death reached him. Freddy arrives with a satchel of war-earned knowledge, morphine gauze and hands that understand what's broken by sound alone. He sees the shoulder, the ribs, pokes at the hip. This is gonna hurt worse than the fall, he tells Bumpy. Do it, Bumpy growls. No morphine, I need to think. Freddy yanks. The socket snaps like thick branches in a storm. Bumpy's scream doesn't echo. It gets swallowed by the alley like a prayer without a god. Ribs get bandaged. Hip inspected. No surgery yet. You can walk, Freddy says. It'll hurt, but you'll move. How long before I can run? Maybe weeks. Maybe months. Bumpy sits up on trembling arms. I've got 90 minutes. Freddy stares. To do what? To turn a fall into a message. That fall wasn't just a survival, it was time bought in blood. Bumpy knows he has a sliver of control. Red Malone thinks he went splat on 7th Avenue. That leaves a window between Red celebrating and Red realizing his mistake. And in that window, Bumpy intends to strike hard enough that not one of those 13 men gets to draw a second conclusion. Sometimes, survival isn't enough. You have to weaponize it. Marcus storms into the alley 20 minutes later with 6 men at his back, each one strapped, loyal, and unflinching. He sees Bumpy alive, barely upright against the brick, bandaged, bruised but impossibly standing. His face twists with something close to awe. They said you were dead. They were wrong. Bumpy's weight shifts to his right leg. The left's useless. The pain is feral, ruthless, but he pushes upright with trembling muscles and rage-fueled will. How long before Red finds out I didn't die? Hour, maybe 2, if we're lucky. Bumpy looks to Marcus with steel in his eyes. Then we've got 90 minutes before they come back to finish the job. What do you need? Everyone. Any man who owes me blood, loyalty, money, life, bring them all. Tonight we hunt. The word spreads like a spark set to dry fields. Harlem ignites. From basement poker games to dusty apartments above corner stores, the call reaches ears tuned to reverence. Bumpy Johnson is alive, and he's calling for his soldiers. They move without questions. No hesitation. The quiet ones. The ones you don't notice until you do when it's too late. 40 men flood into the basement of the barbershop on Lenox within 40 minutes. Tight coats, white knuckles, sharp watches. These aren't gangsters. They're cogs in Harlem's engine. Enforcers. Collectors. Veteran killers who made peace with blood long ago. The smoked room thickens with purpose. No doubt. No mercy. Freddy checks Bumpy's pulse. It's fast and wrong beneath the skin. You should be flat on a mattress. You're losing blood just breathing. Bumpy shakes him off. I'll sleep when Red stops breathing. There's no fear in the room, just silence waiting for command. Bumpy steps forward, each breath pure pain. His voice doesn't need volume, it has weight. They think I'm dead. Red thinks he owns Harlem now, thinks tomorrow his boys walk in and take everything. We can't give them that chance. Marcus spreads a map over the table. Red ink marks 5 locations. Sullivan's Tavern, Dems's Gym, Lucky 7 Social Club, Murphy's Garage, Alice's Bar. Each spot is a vital artery in the Westside operation. Bumpy explains it plain. 5 teams, 5 minutes, each one of you erases a location. Every soldier, every ledger, every dollar. No survivors, no witnesses. When the sun rises, the Westside Boys no longer exist. One of the Korean War vets pushes back. That's a lot of killing in 90 minutes. This isn't revenge, this is sanitation. Bumpy's face remains still. He's not chasing satisfaction, he's ending a problem. Revenge is messy. Revenge makes enemies. Elimination ends conversations. This is math. Each team gets its target, weapons, routes, and backup plans. No one questions the plan. They just listen. Time is sharp. Bumpy's words are sharper. Sullivan's Tavern falls first, 10:45 on the dot. Dems's Gym hit at 10:46. Lucky 7 at 10:46. Lucky 7 at 10:47. Murphy's Garage and Alice's Bar end at 10:48. 5 locations, one after another, no delays, no room for error. Watches synchronized, instructions final. We move in 70, Marcus says, strapping steel to his waist. Every man double-checks their weapon. They know what's coming. Freddy corners Bumpy again. This morphine will edge the pain, but once it wears off, shock's coming. You'll collapse. Then we end it before I fall, Bumpy replies. He accepts a single shot of morphine, not for comfort, but function. It's enough to keep him locked in the moment, without letting him drift. They gather around that marked map. For many, it's the last time they'll see each other alive. Bumpy points to the red circles. Red assumed the fall was enough. That gives us this one window to hit before he knows he failed. They arm themselves silently. Pistols, shotguns, bats wrapped in cloth meant for one assignment: close work, blood work, fast work. They memorize escape routes. Who to run if cops show, which exits burn. Every man wears calm-like armor. 60 minutes, Marcus reminds the group. Bumpy eases into a chair. His body is caving in, even with the morphine, but his mind is iron. Around him, the machine he spent years building keeps moving, And it was never about rage. It was always about control. Red Malone sits at his usual table in Sullivan's Tavern, sipping whiskey like it's victory in a glass. Around him, his soldiers laugh loud and easy. One of them mimics the way Bumpy's body tumbled to the air, limbs flailing like a rag doll tumbling through space. Another mocks the sound it must have made when he hit the pavement, like dropping a watermelon off a fire escape. They've already rewritten the story in their heads. It ends with a corpse and an empire ripe for taking. But Red doesn't know the ending's still being written. The door slams open at 10:45. 6 men from Harlem step in. Shotguns already drawn. No words, no ceremony. Red's hand reaches down, fumbling for a weapon he'll never get to. The first blast punches into his chest like an iron fist, lifting him from his seat, tipping his whiskey glass, hurling him into splintered wood and shattered pride. He's gone before his body hits the ground. Sullivan dives for his holster. The second blast tears into him, shattering bone, elbow to wrist, now a spray of meat and shattered nerves. He tries to scream. The third shot turns his throat into silence permanent. Chairs scatter. Glass rains down. Soldiers collapse mid-laugh, cut down before the sound can leave their voices. 12 Westside Boys were there when the doors opened. None breathe by the time they close again. 90 seconds. No names called. No lives spared. 10 blocks south at Dems's gym, Team 2 hurls Molotov cocktails through the windows. The fire hits quick, liquid heat racing across the mats, up ropes, around punching bags. 8 men inside. Some training, some boasting, some fighting. None ready for combustion. Smoke pours out faster than legs can move. Exits blocked. Those who make it to the alley face Harlem men with shotguns and dead eyes. The building collapses. Bodies cook. Nothing remains but cinders and silence. At Lucky 7. Team 3 moves in through the basement door. Inside, 3 accountants hunch over stacks of numbers and books. The basement smells like ink, whiskey, and sweat. It only takes seconds. The shots aren't sloppy. 1 shot each, no missed intentions. Blood ruins ledgers, flames ruin evidence. Red's money burns quietly in the dark while the city above sleeps unaware. Meanwhile, Murphy's garage becomes a tomb. 4 mechanics, 6 cars, 2 deep pits for bodies and secrets. If someone screamed during the cleanup, no one heard. Team 4 enters fast and clean. They don't flinch at blood or heat or the panic in a man's eyes right before the barrel answers his fear. Tires explode. Fuel ignites. Cars melt into frames. No whispers survive. And then, Alice's bar. The brain trust sits around a table littered with unfinished drinks and half-formed ambitions. 9 men, believing the city is theirs now. Each one certain Bumpy Johnson died screaming on the pavement. The Harlem crew arrives at 10,048. They don't argue, they don't warn, no countdown, just noise. Brutal and roaring, shotguns empty. Pistols follow. Blood splatters across the table where future plans once sat. The men drop where they sit or die on the floor before drawing breath for resistance. The work is done before the bartender can blink. 5 targets, 5 minutes, no survivors. By the time clocks tick to 10:50, the Westside Boys are no longer a crew, a force, or an organization. They're just names soon to be forgotten, written in ledgers that burned, with voices that stopped mid-sentence. The numbers tell a story that won't be told in courtrooms. 37 men dead, 49 more injured, some so bad they'll never walk the same. Not one Harlem man touched, caught, or questioned. It wasn't a gang war. It was deletion, executed so cleanly. Harlem didn't just defend its crown. It made sure no one dared challenge it again. Red Malone brought 13 men to kill one. Now they don't even leave behind 13 ghosts. Harlem wakes up the next morning colder, quieter, but more certain than ever. Bumpy Johnson didn't just survive a fall. He flipped the whole world underneath him and landed like a warning. When the newspapers get wind of it, they christen it the Hell's Kitchen Massacre. Pages filled with blood, speculation, and official voices calling it gang-on-gang warfare. But the commission, the ones who run New York's true underworld, they don't see chaos. They see a message, a problem handled with surgical precision, a war that started and ended before most even knew it had begun. By sunrise, the echo is everywhere. The Westside Boys, gone. Red Malone's name vanishes from police lists and whispered rumors, scrubbed from ledgers and erased from alley conversation. His taverns sit empty, his docks stripped of tribute, the people who once collected in his name, silent or 6 feet deep. Overnight, his reign dissolves like salt in a storm. No border talks, no revenge hits, no rumors of regrouping, just scorched ground. Harlem, meanwhile, doesn't celebrate. Celebration is noise. This victory prefers quiet. Policy banks open on time. Runners hit their routes. The neighborhoods hum like a wheel back on track. The only change? A silence darker than usual around 59th Street. A respect enforced not through posters or speeches, but through absence. Places that used to spit danger now remain closed like crime scenes with no crime. See, Red Malone thought the same thing so many of them did, that black gangs were different, that their restraint was weakness, that peace meant fear. He believed they wouldn't fight back the way his kind would. He believed Harlem didn't have the nerve, and that belief got him buried without a nameplate. By noon, word hits Frank Costello. He sits at his desk, eyes scanning police reports, scratchy photographs, coded witness statements that don't say much but mean everything. Coordinated assaults, 5 locations, 5 teams, no survivors. He doesn't ask who gave the order. He already knows. Bumpy's legend reaches across borough lines by sundown. 3 days later, Costello sends word. Harlem belongs to Harlem. The 1935 peace holds. No more pushes north. No more overreach. Everybody stays in their lane. No need to test what can happen again. It sticks. For years, through the rest of the 50s and into the 60s, Harlem doesn't just survive. It thrives. Self-governed. Self-protected. The streets remember blood like it happened yesterday. The commission understood now. Some leaders aren't made by bullets or titles. Some earn it by surviving impossible odds and returning calculated fire instead of wild heat. When Bumpy Johnson finally dies in 1968, it's not dramatic. No bullets, no fall. Just the end that even kings must one day face. Carlo Gambino sends a wreath to the funeral. It costs more than most Harlem households earn in half a year. There's no note, no speech, just a silent acknowledgement that legends bury enemies and rewrite rules. Red Malone's grave? Unmarked. No flowers. No name. No memory. Buried in dust and silence. The kind of end reserved for men who mistake patience for surrender. In dark corners, people still whisper about the Westside Boys, not with fear, but as a warning. Because some rooftops don't just take lives, they forge legacies. The Westside Boys became a myth, the kind told in back alleys or bars where voices drop low when the story comes up. Not out of respect, but because the ending doesn't need repeating. It's not a ghost story, it's a lesson, a reminder of what happens when ambition oversteps caution and fear underestimates resolve. Because here's the thing about violence, anyone can do it. Any fool with a weapon and the will to swing it can inflict damage. That's the easy part. What Bumpy taught wasn't how to destroy, but how to decide when. The fall wasn't what made the legend. Survival wasn't either. It was what came next, the decision to turn pain into purpose, to breathe through shattered ribs and blood-filled lungs for just long enough to turn a rooftop into a chessboard and Red Malone into a pawn he didn't know he was. Power doesn't always look like steel and volume. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Sometimes it waits, folds its hands, and knows how many moves it takes to checkmate a kingdom. Bumpy didn't respond with rage. He responded with numbers. with blueprint-type planning, with an understanding that if you put 13 men on a rooftop and fail, they don't walk away. Not one. The fall was never supposed to be survived. Not at that height. Not onto concrete. Yet Bumpy turned 48 feet of open air into his strategy. While Red drank to victory, Bumpy was already assigning targets. 90 minutes. That's all it took. 5 teams. 5 strikes. An entire organization wiped from the streets before the sun came up. There was no police trail. No bodies laying around for Brooklyn's bosses to avenge. Just ashes, empty chairs, and neighborhoods that quietly boarded up anything that once carried a Westside name. And that's how real power talks. Not through press, not through parades, but through the sudden vacuum left by 37 men who thought Harlem wouldn't answer back. Bumpy Johnson knew that Harlem wasn't just a place, it was a system, a network, a body. The streets breathed in rhythm and could choke when invaded. The people knew the rules, the order, and Bumpy, he was the current beneath it all, keeping the blood flowing and the bones stable. Anyone who thought they could remove him without consequence hadn't been paying attention. No wall sealed Harlem after that night. No announcement said borders closed. But every man who walked those streets felt the change. You didn't step into Harlem with plans unless you wanted to test your own obituary. And nobody did. Not after what Bumpy did with just 90 minutes and a body held together with broken bones. Even the Italian commission, men not easily impressed, understood what he built wasn't made of bricks or bluffs. It was deeper. It was myth turned into management. War turned into law. And when that law was tested, Harlem handled it internally, with no fanfare, no forgiveness, only fire. So when Bumpy died years later, not from bullets or betrayals, but from simple mortality, they buried him a man. But the city remembered him something more. Not a gangster, not even a king, but a mathematician of power, a strategist of survival. He defended lines that weren't marked on maps, but were as real as any wall ever built. And when he fell, he didn't just rise. He made sure no one else ever stood in his shadow. The rooftop still stands. Concrete repaired, brick faded, tar blackened by time. The street below has been repaved so many times you can't even trace the crack where Bumpy landed. But what happened that night? That never left. It slipped into the foundation, into the way Harlem breathes, into the code of how things move when territory is tested. No plaque marks the spot. No mural honors it. But the silence around 7th Avenue near 1034th carries memory like a scent after rain. Locals walk different near that block, not out of superstition, but understanding. It's sacred, not because Bumpy bled there, but because the wrong men did something worse. They believed nobody would answer. This wasn't just about power, it was about who gets to protect their community, who decides the rules. Red Malone thought force was the only language. Bumpy reminded him that correction doesn't need volume, it just needs reach. And he reached, wide and far and final. The truth is, Bumpy didn't win because he shot first, or because he shouted louder. He won because he listened, calculated, chose moments instead of emotions. That's what made him terrifying to men like Red. Not the bullets, not the boots, but the silence in between, the space where most would flinch or scream. He did math instead. People talk about the 48 feet, how he didn't die, how it was impossible. But the fall was never the point, it was the choice. To take the split-second risk that bruised ribs and shattered joints were better than staying and dying slowly. He didn't wait to be broken. He launched himself into pain and came back with purpose. That's real power. It's not how long you rule, it's how you defend what matters. Not with rage, not even with fire, but with focus. It's the line between kings and legends. Some men are erased when they fall. Others take the fall and erase everything in their way. This story isn't told to romanticize violence or glorify crime. It's told so people understand accountability, strategy, leadership, that not every war is won by swinging harder. Sometimes It's about knowing when to fall and how to rise before your enemies even realize you got back up. Because that's what Bumpy Johnson did. He survived a rooftop execution that should have written his final sentence. Instead, he tore out the last chapter and wrote one Harlem would never forget. Some stories aren't just written in history books, they're carved into the silence of city streets, into scar tissue, into the breath someone takes right after surviving what should have killed them. Bumpy Johnson didn't just survive a fall, he rewrote the rules. At a time when fear ruled the corners and respect was something stolen, he proved that real power isn't taken by force, it's earned through strategy, patience, and precision. Even now, when lines get crossed, people remember his name. Because some men don't break when they fall, they rise and make the fall itself part of the legend. If this story hit you deep, if you felt the weight of leadership, survival, and consequence, hit that like button. Subscribe for more true stories told with meaning, with impact, and turn on that bell so the next time power and history collide, you are the first to witness it. We tell stories that make you feel. Stories that make. What do you think real power looks like? Brute strength or quiet strategy? Drop your thoughts below. We might feature the best ones in our next story.